I felt this book was pretty good overall until I got to the ending, where I have to say it was a little bit underwhelming. What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. You're with Chris, and today I'm super excited to be bringing to you the second episode in my brand new series, reading the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Now for my next pick, I decided to pick up Millennium Falcon by James Luceno, published in 2008. This book was really good overall until I got to the ending, which tended to let me down a little bit. It was a little bit underwhelming, and I'll explain why in just a little while. Now, I've always been curious about the Millennium Falcon. She does happen to be my favourite spaceship of all time. She's fast, she's manoeuvrable, and she's feisty, and I got a lot of my questions answered in this book, which was fantastic. And ever since reading Darth Plagueis very recently, I became that impressed with James Luceno's writing that I had to pick this one up. It was a logical choice for me. Even though I didn't have a physical copy of this one, I decided to read it on the Kindle, which was absolutely fine. Okay, so let's start how I always like to with what the book is about. From the moment the Falcon broke loose from a Corellian assembly line like an untamed creature with a will all of its own, it seemed destined to seek out trouble, and it wasn't long before the feisty YT-1300 went from shuttling cargo to smuggling contraband across the galaxy. But it's a fateful rendezvous on Coruscant at the explosive height of the Republic's separatist uprising that launches a galaxy-wide cat-and-mouse game whose newest players are Han, Leia, Alana and C-3PO. Crime lords, galactic pirates, rogue politicians and fortune hunters alike loom at every turn of the quest, each with his or her own desperate stake in the Millennium Falcon's most momentous mission. Throughout the years and across the stars, from the rim worlds to unknown points beyond, the race will lead them all to a final standoff for a prize some will risk everything to find and pay any cost to possess. Alright, so the novel takes quite a deep, immersive look at the Falcon's backstory and rich history since coming off the assembly line to coming into Han Solo's possession and right up to the present day, which is around 43 years BBY. And it takes place after the events of the New Jedi Order, which I'm yet to read about and can't wait to dive into that. Even though a character death early in the series has already been spoiled for me, but you get that, it is what it is. Now, I had no idea that the Falcon was about 100 years old and it had so many retrofits and numerous hyperdrive replacements, along with mandible replacements and so many patch-ups and non-genuine spare part replacements, that she didn't look like your standard YT-1300 anymore. And it just blew my mind, and I really liked how the history of the Corellian freighter was told from certain points of view. So we meet certain characters in the novel who give their own accounts of their time when they owned the Millennium Falcon, who the ship went by different names at various points in history as well, which was really good. But these stories told by these characters read like their own self-contained stories, but they were flawlessly weaved together with the multiple plot lines, and I think Luceno really nailed it here. He did a really good job with that. It was absolutely brilliant. Now, I found it also really interesting how the Millennium Falcon got roped into various purposes and refitted accordingly to suit those purposes. It was a real treat to read about. For example, she was part of a circus once and had been decorated and painted in different colours, and she was also used as a medical ship. So it was just brilliant to read about that. And the most important thing is how she ultimately got her name, the Millennium Falcon. But that was great, but we still don't know who named her. We know why she was called the Millennium Falcon, but it's something that puzzled me during the book. It was okay to get that answer, but we still don't know who named her. And the people that have read the book probably know where I'm going with this if they've read it, so email me or put it in the comments below so we can compare notes, because it's like an itch that couldn't be scratched. So in the book there are two distinct parallel plot lines here. The first involves Han, Leia, Alana and C-3PO, who trace the Falcon's past and learn more about her legendary exploits and previous owners. So they work backwards through the ship's history. The second is where the Falcon's history is tracked down from the past to the present. So a smuggler who goes by the name of Jadak was flying the Falcon 19 years BBY during the Clone Wars. She was known as the Stellar Envoy back then, and then he falls into a coma after an accident with the Falcon, and he wakes up in 43 years ABY and is still desperate to continue his mission to hunting down this mysterious treasure that is reputed to restore honor to the Republic and to also overthrow Emperor Palpatine. So these two plot lines ended up converging towards the end, which is where it went downhill for me, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, there's some speculation throughout the novel, and this is pretty out there, okay, but it's intriguing nonetheless, and a little, how will I say, arcane. Several times it's hinted at that the Falcon sometimes has a mind or will of her own. For example, in The Empire Strikes Back, when Han tries to show off to Leia about the hyperdrive, and you know how it breaks down, there's theories there that the ship was deliberately stalling so that it could bring Han and Leia closer together, and when Han rejoins the rebellion in A New Hope at the end, it's almost as if the Falcon turned back instead of Han. Another example is the shipbuilder on Corellia. When the Falcon was being built, he witnesses the Falcon coming off the assembly line and behaving erratically like a wild animal, wanting to break free of its bindings. So it's pretty much food for thought there, and it's a very, very interesting set of theories about the Falcon, which I found very interesting as well. Okay, now a side note here that's very amusing. I found reading about 3PO in the book and reading his dialogue, I found myself in my head reading it in Anthony Daniels' voice. So it was a little bit funny there, and look, it's not surprising why 3PO is one of the Star Wars EU's most beloved characters, and you know, it's just like BB-8 from the movie sequels. I love that little droid, and yeah, it was really fun, but couldn't help but have Anthony Daniels' voice in my head while reading about C-3PO. Okay, now let's talk about the ending here briefly, because I don't do spoilers on the channel, but as I mentioned earlier, the book was great, but when I got to the final pages of the book, I was excited to see what this treasure was, and there was all this build up throughout the novel, and then it just was very lackluster. It was very meh. When the treasure is revealed, I'm like, well, this isn't exciting. I'm like, what the fuck, man? But that said, there's speculation that something else may be out there, but I'll leave it at that. But it was quite frustrating when you're teased throughout the book that this treasure is going to be unreal, and it's yeah, a little bit disappointing, but I'll leave it at that. So let's wrap this up. I mean, Luceno's writing was really vivid and immersive, as I was expecting. I really like how he paints a detailed picture of the EU. His prose is always engaging, where you have no choice but to keep turning those pages. And his research, like I mentioned in the last video about Darth Plagueis, it's impeccable. The book is full of lore and alien species, and just so rich, and how the events are alluded to and touched upon with the new Jedi Order, for example, makes me want to dive in. And look, I haven't read any of the Jedi Academy series or anything like that that talks about Han and Leia's children, so I'm very, very ignorant to that, but I feel like getting into the new Jedi Order very, very quickly, and rather than read the book straight away, I might just look at watching some YouTube primers or something like that, or read some notes on what I need to know before starting the new Jedi Order, which really intrigues me. I've got the first 3 books of the series, so I may get into those sooner rather than later. So I'm looking forward to reading more and more books in the Star Wars EU, so I feel this series is going to be a regular thing on the channel so that I can really immerse myself in the Star Wars EU and read a lot of the books I've always wanted to, which is going to be fantastic. So looking forward to the journey continuing. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much for watching. That is it for episode 2 of Reading the Star Wars Expanded Universe. Please let me know what you think. Put any comments or feedback in the comments below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And until the next video, guys, happy reading.